Good morning to everybody that's joining us from all over South Africa. I'm from Exporters Eastern Cape. I'm on the committee for the marketing division specifically. My name is Neil Barker, and I'll be facilitating today's talk specifically with Andre and Dean, and I'm going to introduce them now specifically as everybody is starting to join us for this live chat. I'm also just going to go through the rules and everything as everybody's joined. I can see there's quite a few still joining at the moment. So just to introduce each speaker specifically, we've got Andre Claassen. He's the founder of Offshore FX with over 15 years experience in Forex, Treasury, and outsourcing specifically. Very welcome to you, Andre.
Thank you, Neil. Nice to be here.
Then we've got Dean Meyer. He's got a BCom and chartered accountant in South Africa with over 25 years experience as a CFO in South Africa and abroad as well. Very welcome to you, Dean.
Thanks, Neil. Good to be here.
So obviously today we're going to talk about offshore FX. It's boutique multi-banking foreign exchange services provider and works with importers and exporters of all sizes as well. We're going to go through that. We're going to discuss a few questions that we've already come up with. But you're also more than welcome to go to the chat side. And you'll all see there's a chat side on the right hand. You can address the question to myself, or you can open it up to everybody. Just to see that it is working, can I ask one or two people just to on the type of your comment, just to say that you can all hear and see us specifically, so that we know everything is running quite perfect with that. So just on the right hand side, on the chat side, if one or two people can just comment there for me, that will be great in terms of it. They're very welcome. I can see a few people here: Charles Small, Suzanne, Ilana, Jonathan, Neil, Roger. Just to mention a few people that's joining us at the moment. So if you can just go to the right-hand side so I can see all is working perfectly of that. In the interim, just a thank you to our diamond members from Exporters Eastern Cape, which is SJM, Volkswagen Group South Africa, Propeller, DG Capital, IDC, Eberspacher, CEDA, Business Chamber of Nelson Mandela Bay, and Oracle Media, who's our diamond members at Exporters Eastern Cape. Also, just a quick one, anybody that wants to get hold of us, you're more than welcome to contact Suzanne Vermeulen at info@exportersec.co.za. If there's anything that you do need from her in terms of that, I can see everybody can hear and video is perfect. Thanks so much, Jonathan, Neil, and Suzanne for that. We also now know that you can ask questions and comment as we go along this morning. So please do add anything that you'd like to ask in terms of that. So to start off this morning, and it's quite an interesting talk, talking, how does offshore work specifically, and I'm going to start off specifically with Andre. Could you maybe paint a picture of the overall South African banking foreign exchange landscape and how offshore FX fits into that specifically?
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Neil. A very, very important question. I think to start with, it's very important to realize and to know that South African bank fees as a whole are probably if not the highest in the world, it's of the highest in the world. And when it comes to foreign exchange payments, the foreign exchange aspect of a bank's revenue streams, it forms quite a big part of their revenue streams. And in the history of foreign exchange payments, banks have not been really regulated in terms of, or they still really aren't, in terms of what the margin is that they offer their clients when it comes to these foreign exchange payments. So companies like Offshore FX have come into play over the last couple of years, where we have relationships with certain key banks that we prefer to work with, where we are mandated by the Financial Services Board, which it was before, and now it's the FSCA, the Financial Services Conduct Authority, where with every interaction with any client that we have, whether it's a private individual or an importer or an exporter, we have to have full transparency of our fees that we charge, or of the margins that are charged on each foreign exchange transaction. So to put it, okay, I'll get back to that now. But just to paint the picture a bit further. So typically banks would have, and it depends on the size of the bank, a few thousand clients that do foreign exchange payments. So that could be part of the private individuals that send money in and out of South Africa. That could be small to medium to large size businesses that import and export. So in that frame of reference, a bank's capacity, banks have dealing rooms where in those dealing rooms they facilitate some of those clients' foreign exchange payments. But the dealing rooms, often they qualify the clients for better exchange rates, and they offer a bit more of a service in helping the clients to conduct their foreign exchange payments. But in reality, those dealing rooms only serves a small part of the bank's whole foreign exchange portfolio, meaning that a bank could have 4,000 or 5,000 foreign payment customers, companies and individuals, and a dealing room might just look after a couple of hundred of those. The rest of those clients all have to do their payments through the bank's call center or back office. And that could be and is very often very, very inefficient and very costly to the clients. And this is a very important thing to understand, because a lot of clients will have all their facilities with a bank. They've got their overdraft, they've got their check accounts, they've got their credit card facilities, they've got their hire purchases on vehicles, etc. And they feel kind of locked in when it comes to their forex payments, that they don't have other options, and they kind of feel like a victim to whatever the bank's fees are that the bank charges them, and they don't really feel they have room to negotiate or not aware of what their options are. So a company like Offshore FX has come into play over the last couple of years, where banks, where before could just charge any margin they'd like, where we could come in and almost in a way objectively analyze a company's foreign exchange portfolio and what that relationship is that they have with that specific bank. And there are banks that are very good at the service that they offer, and the exchange rate they offer the clients are fair. But then there's a number of banks that it's not the case at all. So I find typically with somebody, like when I go see a client, when we see clients, it's not trying to get their business. It's trying to understand what is their relationship with their bank, how does their foreign exchange portfolio work, and what is the option to add value to those clients. And often I can walk away and say to a client, your margins are perfect, the way it's conducted is perfect, and you don't need our help. Or very often I can go and say, there's lots of better ways for you to manage your FX portfolio, which at the end of the day can result in a major amount of savings to companies.
Oh, wow.
And to individuals.
So it's nice to get that objective view as well, and to see what you are paying to each bank, and obviously for you. How do you optimize the foreign exchange function of your business then?
All right. So I would like to go before I even answer that, is saying the first thing one wants to understand is that you want, like somebody like Offshore FX, we care about our clients. So what I mean by that is, banks' dealing rooms are often pressured to stretch margins with their clients. So often when a client needs to make a payment with a bank, the dealers are under pressure to stretch margin, to try and get the best or most margin they can from a payment. So often it's not consistent. With some banks, the payments are consistent, and other banks it's not. So a client today could get a margin that's loaded with 2%, and the other day it could be 1.5% off the intrabank rate. So you want to be in a position where you optimize your forex function, where you feel you are in control of a number of things. So the first thing you want to know is that you are receiving the right pricing from your bank. Very key. There are banks where clients don't have a big enough turnover or volume with their forex payments where they feel that they can actually negotiate with the bank to get better margins. Yeah. And the biggest tier of those clients will then fall under like a tier from the bank where they get the retail pricing from that bank. And just to put it in perspective, that retail pricing can often be loaded by 1.5% to 2% off the intrabank. So let's say the dollar is 18 Rand to the dollar. So 1% would then be 18 cents onto that 18 Rand. So 18 Rand, 18 cents, and then 2% would be 36 cents. So when the intrabank is around 18 Rand to the dollar, a client can pay up to 2%, 18.36 for a dollar on a payment. So when you're paying those fees, there's lots of importers and exporters that are doing $100,000 payments once a week or once every 2 weeks, and they're often overpaying. And when we say 2% in real terms can be 40 to 50,000 Rand per payment per week, which they don't need to pay. So it can be as much as that. And that is the important thing to realize. And even clients that are doing bigger volumes, you'll be surprised by companies that are doing a couple of $100 million a year that are still paying their banks retail pricing on when it comes to the margin, which is extremely costly, and it's not necessary to go there. So the first thing when optimizing your forex funds is to make sure you get the right pricing. The second thing is to monitor, to closely monitor the movement of the markets. So clients often in the running the business don't have the time to sit in front of a screen and watch the movement of the market. So something like offshore FX, the client will communicate with us saying, listen, I've got to export proceeds. I've got a week or two to convert these dollars into rands, and we'll just monitor it. And, if the rand is weakening as an exporter in their favor, we'll monitor it. And let's say it turns around, starts coming back. We'll call the client and say, it's went from 18 to 1850. It's turned back to 1840. What would you like to do? So it's just closely monitoring the market movement. And again, there are so many people that just make their payments without looking at what's happening in the market. And then being up to date with market information. So let's say we know that a Reserve Bank announcement of interest rates is going to be on Thursday, and the market expectation is that the Reserve Bank is going to increase the interest rates with 50 basis points. So that means that there's a very strong possibility if the Reserve Bank increases its basis points that there's going to be an inflow of foreign funds into South Africa that might strengthen the rand. So if you're an exporter, you might want to do that. You might want to convert your funds before that. And if you're an importer, you might want to hold on until that announcement. So it's about trying to make educated decisions about your payment flows. That, again, in South African rand, it's very hard always, and no one really knows always what's going to happen, but you can have a feeling for it. And then, when it comes to bigger payments, to have an educated view on what's happening can actually save you a lot of money. So the other very important part is to manage trade orders to prevent your exposure to up and down market swings. And what I mean by that is when the rand, as I think most of us know, is one of the most volatile currencies in the world. If it's a Friday afternoon, and I have an example of a client in Port Elizabeth a month ago, and he had to make a payment on a Friday, and it was 18 rand to the dollar, and he was hoping that he was going to hold it till Monday. But if he put in an order at whatever the volume was, 18.10 over the weekend, he didn't have to wake up, which happened on the Monday when it was 19 rand to the dollar. And that, in a way, could sink, and has, in a lot of cases, almost sank a lot of businesses. So with their bank relationship, they don't have that relationship where they can manage their payments, put orders in where they don't wake up on a Monday or the next day or the next morning or a week later with a surprise to the extent that they can't afford to make those payments. And then the other thing, which is very important, which Dean is going to touch on, is effective risk management strategies, risk management and hedging strategies, which, Dean will talk about that, but it's important to have a view as a company to what is your thought process with your business model, and what view are you going to take in a volatile rand over a year period of time, and how are you going to see this in a fluctuating rand? How are you going to try and manage your business? So I'm not going to touch on that. Dean will talk about that, but so just to summarize that, because it's quite important, is to say, make sure you get the right pricing from your bank. Make sure that either you or somebody like Offshore FX works with you to monitor the market movements and to inform you when there's some up and down swing, so that here's a pivotal moment, and you have the tools and you're in the movement of the market to make educated and informed quick decisions. The other one is also just executing trades timelessly. It's like some clients will submit the payment to a bank, and the bank will call them the next day to execute the trade. Or they'll first do an exchange control application and wait for the bank for a week until that exchange application goes through before they trade. A company like us will first say, let's try and get that exchange control application through so we know it's good to go. We will assist the client, working on behalf of the client with the bank, to push these processes faster. And once everything is in line, we want to execute kind of real time with the client when the time is right, instead of waiting for the bank to call you, or which again, very often, and this is a weekly occurrence with people that contact me, where of no mistake of their own, they've submitted a payment, and the bank takes a few days, and sometimes a week, sometimes 10 days because there's a problem in the process log, and then the rand has moved 50 cents to a rand against the dollar, and then the client pays for that, and it's not necessary.
Yeah. So that what's quite important if you take away from that is also how do you gauge if the bank is the right fit for your business then? Because all of what you've said just now needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, great question, Neil. And it's all about, most importantly, is do you feel in control of your Forex payment? Do you feel that you're managing optimally? And optimally meaning, if I want to make a payment, if I want to trade, I can do it right now. Do I feel that my pricing is right? Do I know that? And we'll talk about pricing just now, but am I getting the best pricing from my bank? And is it smooth and easy? And again, there's so many clients where there's exchange control improvements or payments that get logged and they have to call through a back office or a call center to try and get hold of somebody, and they can't because that person that's dedicated to their portfolio is not available, they're on lunch, and they don't get back to the clients. And if that is the case, then you have to speak to somebody like us or that can help you to make that process efficient, smooth, and very importantly, to execute your trades when you want to. If that makes sense.
And I think a lot of businesses are looking to have less hassle when doing business every single day. That's I think a massive thing that people look at. But also, if you're looking at who's the right fit for you, then you should also probably be looking at your margins. So, what margins should I expect to be paying a bank?
I think, in fairness, as a rule of thumb, for a private individual and a small importer-exporter, you should never be paying more than 1% of the intrabank spot at any given point in time for a normal spot transaction. So, if it's 18 rand to the dollar and you're an exporter and you want to convert your funds, to get 18 cents less than $18, provided that there's a bit of a cent or two spread between the 18 rand. So, if you're getting around the region of 17.80 as a rule of thumb, is a good starting point. These are on smaller volumes, but to bigger volumes, when your annual Forex flows is 50 million and up, and even up to a couple of 100 million a year, you shouldn't be paying more than 5 cents off the intrabank spot on spot transactions. So I would say for private individuals and small to medium-sized business, never more than 1% of intrabank. And bigger companies, if you're doing more than 60 to 80 million a year, never more than 5%. 5 cents of intrabank would be a fair price.
Okay, cool. Also, those who's joining us at the moment, we are talking to Andre Klaassen and Dean Meyer, and we're specifically talking about offshore FX. Specifically, and how you should be trading. Also, take into account that you're more than welcome to ask any questions or any suggestions or comments in the chat side. So before we come to the end a little bit later on, if you can post your questions now so long so that we can make sure that we do go through it, or even your thoughts, specifically, do you agree, do you disagree, and anything you'd like to share from your side, just in the comment section specifically as well. If I can ask the following question, what are the typical areas where you think exporters need the most help specifically?
Neil, I think a typical problem is where clients have been with their bank for many years, and because of that, they think that they're getting a good service and a good margin with their bank. So they've got a sense of loyalty because they think that they are, because they've walked the long road with the bank, the bank is loyal to them. And very often, it's the opposite which is the case. So very often you see, because the client has been with the bank so long and the client assumes that they're getting a good service, good margin, that the bank actually stretches that margin as wide as possible. So the first thing I would say is to break that school of thought where you are comfortable in just your normal processes. And there are exporters and importers I've seen in Port Elizabeth area where they are so comfortable, but they're doing 250 million rand a year. They're getting the retail pricing of their bank. They don't even look at the market movements. They submit their payments robotically at the last day of a month without looking even at the rate of the day to process their payments. And I analyze their flows, and I could just off the cusp, just like that, save those companies 10 million rand a year, just like that. So I would say, loyalty and thinking that you're comfortable in what you are is a big problem. And people think like a foreign exchange intermediary like offshore FX comes to you And they will say, well, how is it possible that you can get me better exchange rate than I can with myself? And the reality is that we have a relationship with a number of banks. We understand the dynamics of almost every single bank in South Africa and how they operate. Now, I can easily tell you whether your bank is a good fit for you or not. And if it's not, we have the capacity to say to bank, give the client a better rate, or to the client, this is not the right relationship you should have. We can recommend a different scenario for you. And ultimately, we are making it easier for a client, more cost effective. We are taking the Forex load off of your hands, and we are managing that to make your whole process smoother, more efficient, and ultimately saving you money.
So you come in and do a whole assessment and helps the company with that?
Yeah, I mean, in a couple of minutes with the chat, whether it's a Zoom chat or seeing the clients, we can quickly assess whether things are being managed correctly or not. And whether immediately we can do a live rate comparison, get the client to call his bank, and we can right there sit off our screen, and I can tell him the margin the bank is taking from you is 15 cents of intrabank, or 20 cents, or 10 cents. And then we can decide together whether that's a fair margin. You know, our service offering is a win-win in the sense of we add value often by getting the client a better exchange rate, irrelevant of your size. And then we invoice the bank for our work at the end of the month. We don't invoice the client, so it's a win-win. We give our service to a client. They don't have to pay us. We invoice the bank, and we've given the client a better margin on the exchange rate.
Oh, wow. That's a bit of a no-brainer then to get us a better margin.
It is.
Also, a big thing, I've been hearing a lot about cryptocurrency arbitrage. Can you maybe explain how that specifically works?
Yeah, this is a very, I think it's a good that you raised this, because cryptocurrency is obviously on the forefront globally, and arbitrage transactions. South Africa is one of the countries that does the most arbitrage transactions in the world. So how it works is typically, if a South African was to send money, let's say you have US dollars and you want to buy Bitcoin on a cryptocurrency platform like Bitstamp that's in the UK, you will do a transaction where you take rands and you transfer dollars to a Bitstamp platform, for example, and on that platform you will then, what the cryptocurrency arbitrage guys are doing is they will then buy Bitcoin or a crypto, but in this case, as an example, Bitcoin, with those US dollars on the Bitstamp platform, and then immediately transfer the Bitcoins and it takes about 20 minutes to half an hour, from the Bitstamp exchange. In South Africa, there's a couple of exchanges, but let's say use Luno as the cryptocurrency exchange. They will transfer their Bitcoins to the Luno exchange in South Africa. And there's often between a 3 to 7% difference between the price of a Bitcoin on those two exchanges. So, for example, I do this in a personal capacity. So let's say, there's limits to what you can do. You're only allowed to do it as a private on your single discretionary allowance, 1 million rand a year. And if you have a foreign investment allowance, like you get a tax clearance for it, you can take up to 10 million a year. So, for example, if I take 250,000 rand and I do a transfer today, I buy US dollars and I transfer those dollars to Bitstamp, and then immediately I buy Bitcoin on Bitstamp, and I move those Bitcoins to Luno and I convert. You'll often make a price differential between 3 and 7%. So, and that depends on the day and a lot of factors. It's just something interesting because arbitrage is a big thing, but also, the cryptocurrency world is coming closer to us. And if you read KPMG, a lot of companies are starting to look at, how to service and facilitate their customers with cryptocurrency transactions. And the reality with crypto is it's much faster than your traditional banking system, and it's cheaper. You can do, instead of waiting for a day or two for your funds to arrive offshore, cryptocurrency exchange can take, it can take a couple of minutes. And in real time, if you think about the cost and the convenience of that, it's massive. But having said that, from a global point of view, I think there's a lot of school of thoughts, maybe in the next decade, we're going to look at really central banks integrating crypto into the system. A lot of central banks are creating their own cryptocurrencies globally. and we need to see how it pans out. I just think it's important for everybody to kind of put crypto on their radars so that it's not too foreign when it becomes a layman's term, and not to get too far behind with it. It's something good to, if you go on Twitter and you follow Bitcoin news, for example, it's a good feed that gives you up-to-date things that are happening, not just in cryptocurrency world, but on central banks' feeds and global views about cryptocurrency. And I find that very informative, and I think it's quite good to just follow that every now and then, just to be up to speed with things.
And is it also quite safe?
Yeah, so that's always the question. There's risk with everything, and the big thing with crypto is to have faith in the exchange that you use. There's now been lots of hackers and fake exchanges globally. So everything has a risk to it. But the main thing I would say in this arbitrage and crypto world is to make sure that your exchange is a credible one. And from my research, like a Bitstamp or a Kraken, that's a US based one. But then again, once you have Bitcoin on your exchanges, you want to buy like a Nano S, which is like, it looks like it's actually a wallet that is a crypto wallet that you put your currency on and you keep it as a safe in your house. It can get hacked on an exchange. So these are the things you need to get in tune with. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it, that's interested, that's listening to this. It's not what we specialize in, but it's good that you are, because cryptocurrency is on the radars globally, and it's going to become more and more like that, more and more prevalent as the days go by.
Oh, well, it's just interesting how technology is advancing and all of the new methods it's coming about.
Absolutely.
Then, just before we go on to the next question, I see a few people joining us as well. We're currently talking to Andre Klaassen and Dean Meyer, specifically offshore FX, and you can more than welcome to ask any questions or comments. I can see Ilana's already asked the question. We will get to that at the end. Thanks, Ilana. So a few more questions, that'll be awesome. And before we go on to the next question, just again, a thank you to our diamond members of Exporters Eastern Cape, which is SJM, Volkswagen Group South Africa, Propeller, DG Capital, Eberspacher, IDC, CEDA, Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, and Oracle Media specifically. So any questions or any thoughts, please go to the chat site, and we'll be going through that quite shortly. Andre, also, I understand that you've created a Sky Treasury, a partner company to offshore FX. Can you explain more on that relationship for me?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Sky Treasury has been created with my years of foreign exchange experience, where we go see companies and look at their FX payment processes and flows, come to the realization what an incredible need there is for proper financial management. And Dean and I created Sky Treasury, where offshore FX is the foreign exchange leg of Sky Treasury, where we conduct the FX part of our service. But Dean comes in with an array of financial management skills, where we look at combining sound financial management to companies with an FX background, of combining both of those. And that's why I'm really excited about Dean talking about it, because I think with where we are now globally, and especially nationally with COVID and our budgets, with the pressure that everybody's under, a lot of people are stuck with not feeling that they have affordable solutions when it comes to having assistance with proper financial management. And that's why Sky Treasury has been created, a merge between proper sound financial management and also assisting with the FX component for companies that import and export.
Oh, wow. So it's literally taking things to another level and just combining. Exactly. So Dean, you come in there specifically as well.
Yeah.
And then I obviously want to ask you with regards to that, can you elaborate on the businesses conducting sound financial management, and what it means and how it helps clients?
Yeah, look, I think before I get into the detail of that, the objective of sound financial management is to ensure, one, that whatever profitability you've priced into your products, that you actually achieve that profitability in a business. It's all about protecting your profits and managing the business risks that you're exposed to. So when I look at what sound financial management means, I can look at it in three broad categories. The first one is just your basic regulatory type environment. Are you paying SARS on time? whatever your bank manager said your limits on your overdraft are you sticking within those limits? Just keeping those basic rules in place. That's just the starting point. From there, the next sector I look at a lot is the operational part. So have you got proper systems, accounting and financial systems in your business that you can capture all your transactions in an appropriate manner? And through those, are you getting the right level of reporting out of those systems? The kind of reports that tell you what's really going on in the business. And do you have the right level of interrogation on those reports so you can see what's going right and what's going wrong? And what do I do about those things that are going wrong? And what must I keep doing to keep those things going right, keeping them going right? So that reporting and systems aspect becomes very, very key. And then we get into a more strategic element, which is sort of the things like, are we structured optimally from a tax perspective? Now, I mean, our audience today, a lot of people are exporters, and they might have big operations offshore. Have you got a proper tax structure on those operations so that you must always pay your taxes, but are you paying them optimally? Are you paying the minimum amount as opposed to just blindly paying? So tax structuring becomes important. Another very important area is your pure strategic planning. Where are you going with your business? What are your long-term plans? How are you going to achieve those plans? So putting proper business and strategic plans in place to help you get there. And then surrounding all of that is my sort of real go-to area, and that's cash flow management. What I've seen a lot in businesses over the years, cash flow management tends to revolve down to something along, we wait till we've got money in the bank, then we pay our creditors. Now that is survival mode. That's not cash flow management. For me, cash flow management is looking at least 2 years down the line and sort of saying, where are we going with this business? I know I've got orders, so I know what needs to go out. I know what my input costs are in order to achieve those outputs, but there's a mismatch between those two. How do I manage that mismatch? And often what clients do is they have an overdraft to fund that. Now, overdraft could be an optimal solution. Often it's the most risky solution because an overdraft banks only give you for a year at a time. So they could, at the end of the year, just cancel it. Then what do you do? Overdraft financing is also the most expensive financing, simply because you're paying interest on a continuous basis. So is an overdraft the right form of finance for your business? So, so I'm looking at all of those things. And then the other critical part is people often, when they're negotiating sales, push for the highest price they can get. And they forget about payment terms. Now, sometimes a lower price with better payment terms can actually be more profitable for your business.
Oh, wow.
So when I look at cash flow management, I'm looking at an end-to-end solution as to how we manage the money out back to the money in. And a big part of this, again, taking our audience for today as being exporters, is, of course, what do I do when some of my income is in a foreign currency? How do I manage that? And again, what I typically see is one of two things. The one company that says, look, I can't manage this. I'm just going to stay open on everything and take my chances. Sometimes it works, sometimes it hurts. The other guy says, okay, I've got an export order here. I'm going to take 100% forward cover today. Okay, he knows what he's going to get in, so he's kind of covered a risk. But you could get more margin out of that if you manage it more intelligently. And that's where Andre and I started talking. So look, let's look at ways we can help companies build proper hedging strategies. And a hedging strategy isn't just about taking a one-way bet. It's about understanding the risks. It's understanding what's the minimum margin you can afford to make so that you ensure that minimum margin is at least achieved. It's looking at the timing of your in and out flows, and it's watching the exchange rate on a regular basis to say, look, if it's going against us, what do we then do? It's having that answer up front. So it's very much a proactive type approach to building a proper Forex hedging strategy. And, just to emphasize again what I said right in the beginning, the whole objective about everything we're doing is to protect and enhance the profitability of a business.
No, look, I think that's what most businesses obviously want. But how does your fees work then, Dean?
Again, there's no one answer. Every company's business is different, and the complexity of every company is different. However, a key part of our business model is that we keep our overheads down to an absolute minimum. So what you're really paying is our salary, if you like. We're not paying for fancy offices and secretaries and all of that sort of stuff. So very much we look at like a daily or half daily rate, and it's just how much time do we need to do the work? How much complexity do you want to create into this program? We can do something very simple. We can get very complex and understand everything down to the nth level of detail. So it's very much a time-based charge. And as I said, our rates, if you compare them to the consultancy businesses, the auditing businesses, are a fraction.
And how does it work? Do you decide at the beginning of the month the amount of hours is needed, or is it like this month I need you for 10 hours, next month I need you for 400 hours?
No, the starting point is always to say, what is the deliverable? If that's not clear, you can just stretch hours out forever, and that's not what we want to do. We want to deliver an agreed upon product.
Cool.
And what I'll always do in that case is say, for that deliverable, here's a price. If I need more time, that's my risk. I'm not here to try and just drag out hours and make money off you in that way. So we agree a price for a delivered product, and that's it.
Well, we also spoke off air before we came on. We were actually speaking about cash flow specifically in the question that was asked in the previous webinar. If I've got, for example, I'll bring it up again. If I've got 10 cars, and those 10 cars are R1 million, and the installment on that is 20,000 Rand a month, for example, is it better to just pay that 1 million Rand off now if I've got a cash in my bank account, or is it better to just pay off that money every single month going forward and keep the money in my bank account?
Yeah. Again, Neil, there's no one answer for every company, and this is, what I said earlier is I like to look at a cash flow over a 24-month period. So the first thing I do to answer that question is to sort of let's do a cash flow forecast. What's happening in your business? What are your cash flow needs over the next 24 months? If in 18 months' time you're doing some enhancements to your factory and you need some cash, might be better to keep that R1 million to use it for your factory enhancements. If you just see yourself producing more and more cash because you're not investing anywhere, maybe it's better to pay off that debt today. Often what I'd always look at is to say, what's the cost of that debt? It might be a relatively cheap debt, in which case, why don't you take that R1 million and just park it in your overdraft? You still have access to it, but you're saving more money by parking it in your overdraft. So, I think one has to look at a range of things you can do with the money and then say, for the business, which one makes the most sense? Which one is the most profitable way of using that money?
Yes. Then also I saw a question here from Ilana Meyer. She said, how can you help us to do our cash flow planning and restructuring and structuring as well?
Look, I think that the starting point is to have a conversation. And very quickly through those conversations, one will understand what the objectives of the business are. And you always have to look down the line. Where do you want to go to? What are your plans? What are your needs over the next 12 to 36 months? And through that, we will unpack all of that. Then we'll understand, the next point is to say, all right, let's understand how your cash flows evolve in a business. So what's your timing between selling something and getting the cash in? And we'll model that. And through that, we'll develop a need for cash and get to an answer that way. So it's very much about understanding the business and modeling all of those needs.
So it sounds like a consultation obviously is key for you to business.
It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not this works for company A, therefore it works for company B. You have to do bespoke solutions for every company because every company is different, even in the same industry.
Is there any more questions for Andre and Dean before we do finish off? You can just go to the chat side. Please also, if you do not have questions, let us know what you, just some feedback about this morning's session in the chat side. It'll be quite awesome. If you can just provide feedback there, and also if there's any questions before we do finish off this morning. Just quickly, Andre and Dean, any last few thoughts that you'd like to leave with us?
So I'll go, Andre.
Sorry?
You go. I'll follow up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we pretty much summarized it. I really feel for a lot of the businesses at this point of time post-COVID, and I've been working intimately with a lot of clients that actually ultimately become friends because we get in tune with each other's businesses, and for years we've been working on the FX side of things, and it's been a lot of cases where just having a sparring partner has been rewarding for both them and for me, where somebody else on the outside, but kind of on the inside, could put things into context. For example, I've got a client that needs to pay a supplier in Hong Kong, and that's when the rand was like 16 to the dollar, and then 2 weeks later it's sitting at 19, and that's going to crash his business. But together we can kind of just figure out, kind of just spar off the problem that we're facing, because a lot of guys get sucked into it and they don't know that the problem is so big. But having somebody else to talk to, and together we can work out how big the problem is for the supplier relatively to this payment, and work out a strategy to approach the supplier to see if this is suitable. And there's been a number of those which have actually been worked very well. Unfortunately, there has been a pullback on the rand, so a lot of these guys are going to continue their business. But I think just the heart goes out to everybody during this time in South Africa and the world that are going through a lot of struggles. But I do think what we are trying to say is it's so crucial to cut costs and to manage your financial part of your business optimally. And I think that's what we're trying to offer, just to be a friend to those that need that, and just reach out to us if there's anybody interested in having a chat. And it just needs to be a conversation. It doesn't have to we don't feel any pressure in any way of us trying to get business from you guys. It's just give us a call. Our details are on the site, and we'd be glad to even just have a chat.
Thanks, Andre. Dean, from your side?
Yeah, just to echo a lot of what Andre was saying, it's very tough times at the moment. And the one thing I'm talking a lot to my clients to say is, look, as the economy starts to open up again post the lockdown, how are you actually going to open your business again? You've sort of used a lot of your spare cash to pay your staff and to keep things just going while everything is quiet. Do you have the working capital to progress now and to get things started up again? And how do we do that? And what changes do we need to make in the business so that we can actually continue the business? So it's, and it's tough because it's a different environment that we're in now. So you need to think a little bit differently and act differently. So, a lot of it's just around what are those plans we need to make now to just get going again. Because yesterday's plans are no longer valid.
Definitely. I think that's the most important part, and to make sure that you're working wisely with your money. Before we finish off and share the contact details of Andre and Dean, don't forget our Exporter AGM taking place in July. So if you do not have details of that, please contact Suzanne. Info obviously at Exporters Eastern Cape. You can it's info at exportersec.co.za, and you can talk to Suzanne there specifically about our AGM that's taking place in July now. And just lastly, another thank you to our diamond members of Exporters Eastern Cape, which is SJM, Volkswagen, Propeller, Airbus, DG Capital, IDC, CEDA, Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, and Oracle Media. And then also a big thank you to Offshore FX, also for Andre and Dean sharing all of that information and telling us about their new venture they're going into, as well as Sky Treasury. And that's quite exciting to hear that. So contact information, Andre, if you'd like to share yours first, and then we can go on to Dean.
Yeah, I mean, you can find our details on the website, which is offshorefx.co.za, as well as skytreasury.co.za. And you can contact myself it's Andre or Dean at skytreasury.co.za or Andre at offshorefx.co.za.
Awesome. Dean, anything from you?
Yeah, no, just again, thanks everybody for listening in. And please feel free to reach out. If you just want to have a chat, happy to have a chat. There's no obligations at that level. So please feel free just to talk to us and find out a bit more.
Cool. Andre, Dean, thanks so much for joining and really being part of Exporters Eastern Cape's webinar this morning. I really appreciate it. And we wish you all the luck with offshore FX and also with Sky Treasury. I think it's nice to get a custom advice and to see what how can I save on my company going forward, especially now in COVID-19. You want to save every single cent.
100%. Neil, thanks so much to you, and thank you to all the listeners. It's been great spending time with you all.
No, exactly. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll let you know about the next webinar taking place with Exporters Eastern Cape. And don't forget our AGM in July. Thanks so much. Have a good Thursday, everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.